friends, welcome to Embracing Your Season. My name is Paige Cligenpeel, and today we have a very special episode. In fact, I'm so excited to introduce you to our next guest. She's very special to me. I have known her for 17 years. It's a very long time, so I will allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Cligenpeel.
That's right, friends. This is my daughter. She is the one that made me a mama. She is the one that makes me the coolest mom in the entire world. I'm a cool mom, right? Like, am I allowed to say that?
Nope, you're not allowed to say that. You can't. That doesn't work.
So I can't identify myself. I have to be identified by your friends.
By someone else.
Okay. See, good to know. And that's why she is on this episode today, because she is teaching me not only how to be a mom, but how to be a mom of teenagers, like how to walk along and navigate the life with teens. And even though my expertise is with adolescents, so prior to her joining the adolescent world, I have been in this field as a teen therapist for almost 2 decades now. And then the Lord blessed me with teens. And then I was like, what am I doing? It became very confusing. But thankfully, my kids are great. They have grace for me most of the time. And I have grace for myself most of the time. But today's episode, we're going to be talking about all the things that teens wish their parents knew. Obviously, Haley does not represent all the teenagers out there, but I'm guessing her experience is probably pretty similar to what your teens experience, and they would want you to know. So she and I are just going to have a casual conversation. We're probably going to share some of our banter and our personalities here, but I'm really excited that she's here today. So let's start out with the general big question here of what do you think teens wish their parents knew about the struggles that teens experience?
Okay, so teens have multiple things going on in their life, like school. School is a big thing, and I feel like school can stress people out. Like
100%.
It stresses me out all the time. So school, extracurriculars, all of those things teens are involved in, it just creates stress, and sometimes it gets too much.
It is. It's overwhelming, I'm sure.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you would add on probably just not only like the academic piece, because frankly, and I know that we talk about this a lot too, is like you're learning things that literally you will never use in your life, right? Like your father probably does, but I never used geometry, like ever. Why do they teach that?
I don't know. Math is just not, it's just not.
It's not the way our brains work, right? Yeah. Yeah, and we could probably go into spelling and other things that our brains don't work on. But there is that element of just academics that this is your full-time job. And it's performance-based. So you are graded, literally graded on how much you're retaining and then pouring out the information you're supposed to be learning at school. That's a lot of pressure, right? And I'm guessing you probably compare yourself to your peers, or if you study really hard and you don't get a good grade, I'm sure that's discouraging. Yeah, like there's a lot of those pieces there that I don't think parents understand. So that was a good point. And then I know that you go to a very large high school.
Yes.
Yeah. Gosh, it's huge. Like my context to high school was a K through 12 and it was 750 people total. Like that's it. And that's probably like your class size.
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah, no doubt. So there's also that element, right? Where you're just surrounded by so many people, so many different personalities. But you're saying that teens wish parents knew that it's just a lot of pressure every day, academically. And then you mentioned the extracurriculars, obviously sports, clubs, things like that. So there's another performance element to what teens have to go through. And then the social piece. So let's talk about the social piece a little bit for a minute. And we talked about this offline a little bit as well, is like making friends is unique for teenagers in this culture. Very different, obviously, than what we grew up with in the 80s and 90s, obviously dating myself a little bit. But because we were joking about how we as teens, we would have multiple conversations, but on telephones that were attached to walls. So we could not. I mean, honestly, the coolest thing ever is when we had call waiting. Do you even know what call waiting is?
I don't even know what that
Oh my gosh. It was the most amazing thing. Actually, they still have that on cell phones when you're like on a call and you're like, oh, someone else is calling in kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's super fancy. But it was like brand new back in the day. And I was really, or where you could do like the reverse call, like you find whoever just called you, because then you'd press like, I don't remember, star 39 or something like that. I'm sure other people are saying like, no, it's this, whatever. But Yeah, and then you'd be able to find out who called you. Like, we didn't have caller ID. We didn't have any of that. But okay, I am digressing into the details of my teenager life and social life. But you guys, with your social life, it seems like it is literally 24/7. Like, you can't escape it. So tell me about what friendships are like for you, good and bad, about making friends.
Well, I feel like it's kind of easy to make friends just because, first of all, I go to a school that's huge. And so you're surrounded by these people that are the same age as you. So technically, like, you have multiple ways to just make friends. But also, there's social media, and social media plays a big part in it. You can just make friends. You can talk to whoever you want, like, whenever you want. And it's, yeah.
I do like that for you guys as well, in that you get to interact with people that aren't even in the same state, couldn't even be in the same country, right? And I know that we have to be cautious when we navigate social media, and particularly share with our kids how to be cautious in sharing information or just sharing ourselves with others that we can't identify or we can't meet in person. I do believe there's value in those conversations, but I do like the flip side of that, the positivity, the options of meeting people and learning about different cultures with that, the social media piece, which is cool. But I pointed out, or I noticed that you said that you're able to make friends with so many different people. And what I have heard teens say is there's different levels of friendships. And I call it the unspoken rules of a teen's life, that I think parents should be aware of. Is social life has different levels of friendships. So you have kids that you have class with, right? Those are friends from your class friends, maybe,
School
right?
friends.
School friends. But if you're out in public and you see them at Target, you're not allowed to make eye contact because then it's awkward. Is that right?
Yeah, it depends on the person. Like,
right? Exactly.
yes,
it's embarrassing.
It really is.
See, it's things like this that I'm just like, okay, please tell me more. I'm such a curious person. Please tell me more about why it's embarrassing to make eye contact with someone that you're in class with. But to teens, this is a reality for them, right? And then what's the different level? Then you have people that like you eat lunch with. Those are the ones that are kind of a deeper level of friendship. Yeah. And then what would you say is the next level after lunch friendships?
I feel like almost like the people you hang out with every day. Like, yeah.
Yep, exactly. So these are people that you actually spend physical time with outside of school, most likely. Yeah, and it doesn't even mean that you guys are best friends, but it's more of like this group kind of setting, kind of situation, going to movies or going to the mall. Because kids still go to the mall, right?
Yeah.
They walk around the mall. Yeah. See, that's an 80s, 90s thing as well. And then there's also that inner circle of friends. I would refer to these people as maybe like those detail people that share some of those deeper things that you are thinking or dealing with. And those would probably be referred to as your best friends. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I love parents to know and be aware of is that there's different levels of friendship. But in each of those levels, there's also expectations of commitment, of, love and encouragement for one another. But there's these mores of cultural interactions, again, that even though they call themselves friends, they're not necessarily going to call them up and go hang out at the movies. And so I think maybe we can tell parents, ask those questions about what type of friend that person is for your kids, and then not to judge whatever they say. Like that whole, like, I'm a judger, I'll admit. When she tells me, one of my kids say, well, that'd be weird if I went up and talked to them in the middle of Target. And I'd be like, literally though? Yeah, apparently that's something you just don't do. So yeah, we're being educated all the time, which is great. So that's friendship stuff. I also want to point out with friends how rapidly it changes. How I have learned this the hard way, I think, is that you'll come home and say that maybe you're having a conflict with a friend, and you'll share with me, which I'm so grateful that you share those things with me. I try to provide feedback when in reality should probably just listen, right? But then the next day, so we leave that conversation thinking you're done, right? Like, you've even said that, like, I am never going to be their friend again. I'm like, okay, yep, you stand firm, girl, right? And then what happens the next day?
It's the next day we're just best friends again. So
Help me understand that. Like, what happens in that situation?
I just feel like everyone, like, at least with me and my friends, we all get so heated in the moment and we say things that, like, we don't mean. And then we just, I don't know. We all blow up, but then the next day we apologize and we're fine.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So yeah, conflict resolution I think is a really positive thing because it teaches you how to interact with anybody, really, not just even friends. But there is value in that. So I do appreciate that. But it is almost like whiplash for the parents to have 1 minute best friends, next minute I will never talk to that person again. And then back to, we're best friends, can they come over for an overnighter? And I'm just like, okay. So I guess maybe a suggestion for parents is just go with the flow. Let your kids figure it out.
Yeah. I think that's very important because, like, parents telling you what you need to do kind of, like, in my mind, it makes me, like, not want to do it, honestly.
Yeah, the rebellion piece.
Yeah, like, honestly, but, like, figuring it out for yourself, like, it teaches you.
I love that. Yeah, that's so wise. Dang, girl, you have some wisdom. Who you get that from?
I don't know. Maybe my mom.
I don't know. Oh, gosh, that makes my heart happy. But no, so true, right? I do think that if parents involve themselves too much and dictate what their kids should do too often, they miss out on learning that lesson.
Yeah.
I do think for teens, I think it's important to know that when parents do get involved, it's because they care. They just don't always know how to do it effectively. And that's hard. That's part of the communication piece, right? Of like you talking with your kiddo and your kiddo talking to you about like, how can we do this together? Helping you navigate. Because it breaks my heart when my kids hurt. But I also realize that this is a life lesson that they need to learn. And so it's one of those things like, okay, we'll navigate this together. So that's friendships. Let's talk romance, huh?
Okay.
Oh, I know, which is so weird because, again, I'm your mama and I'm not at that point where I'm like ready for you to have boyfriends. But yet I also see that there is value in exploring who you are as a romantic partner. I do hope one day that you have babies so I can be a grandma. Okay. I'm already coming up with my grandma name. I think I've landed on Mimi. What do you like? Do you like that?
It's okay.
It's so cute, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I like Mimi. So in 15 years, because you're 17, obviously, 15 years is when I'm guessing you're going to have babies. We don't do math.
We don't do math. So I don't.
But we're both so confused. Like, what? I was like, when we add numbers, hold on. We get a little lost in that. But it's going to be a minute before, obviously, you settle down and get married and, you know, have kiddos of your own. But as a teenager navigating romance, how can parents support you, have those conversations to help you kind of navigate that romantic life? Any suggestions on teen dating? Well, maybe the question is, do you think teens should date?
I think that teens should be allowed to date because it teaches them what they want in a relationship and to set boundaries. And it honestly, like, lets you know what type of person
you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm following. I think that is good. As a parent, it is that awkwardness. And I think we've experienced that awkwardness. Because it's like some days I'm like, yeah, go out and hang out. And then other days I'm like, no, you're not even allowed to look at each other. You know, you can't even make eye contact with your friend boy. Yeah, it's just this weird navigating for us as your parents. And your father and I have very different experiences as well. Like he dated in high school. I did not. And so my first relationship happened almost post high school. I think my first boyfriend was probably in my senior year, second semester, right? Like I didn't know what I was doing or what it was supposed to look like. And my parents didn't necessarily equip me in that either. So for me as a parent, I think it is interesting how your father and I are kind of navigating this. I do believe that I see value in allowing teenagers to date, but you and I have had a lot of conversations before you started that.
Yeah.
Right? Like in middle school, we talked about you're allowed to be friends with boys. And actually, one of our dear family friends came up with the term friend boy because he wasn't a boyfriend, but he was a boy who was more than a friend. So you couldn't just say friend, right? It's semantics, but it's important.
Yes.
Like terminology is important. So for us, I think we were just trying to explore how do we as parents have boundaries, helping our kids learn boundaries and self-control, as well as allowing us some of those freedoms to explore what it looks like in romantic partnerships. And I know that we haven't always done it correctly. And I know that you as a teenager are always going to push those boundaries. And I think that's hard for us to navigate. But with our conversations, do you think that allowing you to date and checking in, asking about our boundaries being maintained, and then I also, let me say, we set you up for success in that we don't allow opportunities for you to be in situations that might cause too much temptation, right? Yeah, like we do have rules in our home that you guys cannot be alone. Like you have to be in an open space. The best part is that you have 3 younger siblings and we send them down to do hand checks. That's what I call it. Like hand checks. Because if you're holding hands, like that's fine. But you know what? It still needs to be done within a certain boundary and time frame. So it is that whole thing where it's like we're trying to help you make wiser choices by having boundaries in our home. But I'm hoping that also is teaching you to have your own boundaries outside of that. So how can parents have those conversations with their kids? Because it's awkward. Like anytime I bring up those conversations, you guys say like, Mom, stop.
I mean, it is awkward, but at the same time, it does help a lot. As like, not that I don't want to have those conversations, but like I know.
You think they're important?
Yeah, they are important. And I know they are important. So it's,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. It is. And let me just tell you, it's awkward for me too. It's not like I have fun having these conversations. Like, do you ever just see me like kind of like twitching or like I'm rocking to self-soothe? I'm like, okay, so when you hold hands, and I'm like, can't catch my breath. It's almost like a panic attack.
Yeah.
It is. It hits me so deep. And again, funny enough, like I can have these conversations with any other child in this entire world.
Yeah, but it's different when it's your own child.
Absolutely. It really is. It makes it harder, I think. But what we're saying, I guess, is that parents have those conversations. It's going to be awkward for your kid. It is. It's just going to be weird and they're going to feel uncomfortable. But you sharing your values and your boundaries with them and then helping them set them up for success and having those natural structure within your home, within your control, is very helpful for them so that they are avoiding temptation, but then learning about how to prevent temptation for themselves. And to be honest, there's always temptation, right? Like we live in a world that is highly sexualized. And so our kids are exposed to that in such a deep and vulnerable way at such a young age that if we aren't having that conversation, the world, Google, the school bus, everybody else is having those conversations, right? Like the things you've probably learned on the school bus alone.
It's bad.
It's bad. It is. So we need to be able to be the ones that are speaking truth. That's what discipleship is. We are teaching our kids what Jesus says we should be doing and living and in being his disciple in this world. So that's teen dating. Dang, that's some good stuff, huh? Yeah, good stuff. All right. So next question is, let's talk about marriage. So not so much your future marriage, but more of your parents' marriage. We and my husband, your father, have been very lucky. We've been married almost 18 years. I'm not saying it's all been rainbows and butterflies.
Ups and downs, but it's okay.
Yep, exactly. That's how marriage is. It is sometimes rough, sometimes hard, but we've navigated it. And I think we've come out pretty well. Not all your friends' parents have maintained in relationships. They've seen some stuff. In fact, you and I have talked about even some of your friends whose parents have divorced. Like I remember the one time where you came home and told me that one of your friend's parents, she's the one that determined that they were having an affair, right? Like that was heartbreaking to talk about and to process through. The stuff that kids have to experience their parents going through in such a deep vulnerable way. But for teens, how important do you think it is for their parents to be in healthy marriages or to have healthy relationships?
I think that healthy marriages is an important thing because your parents are basically your role models. Like, you look up to them, and you're going to look up to their marriage and how they navigate marriage. And it essentially, like, creates peace in the home. So if there's, like, destruction, like, it's...
Absolutely.
You see that.
Yeah, and you feel that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I believe that parents, but particularly the father, helps set up the atmosphere in the home. And so if there is tension between the parents, the kids are going to feel that. I think it's just something that they feel like viscerally in their bones, that they know as soon as the parents walk in or if they're fighting, that there's tension, that's going to create some issues. But I do love your point about it being role models as well. I know that your father and I came from different families of origin where the marriages did not survive. In fact, both parents, at least his mom and then my mom, got remarried in better marriages now. And so that was what was modeled for us. And I think, like, for parents, sometimes we're figuring it out too, right? I know that I, not only because of the resources that I have due to just being a therapist and having amazing people that I work alongside, but I'm constantly looking for resources of how to improve and get healthy so that we can model for our kids, because that's the best way to learn. We are the most influential for our kiddos, being parents. So what we do, how we have conflict, how we love, how we nurture, how we raise, how we disciple, all of that is influencing our kids. So I think that's such a good point about how we're role models, and we need to do a good job and take that as a responsibility. I mean, it's overwhelming. Like, that's a lot of pressure. But at the same time, I think what a blessing that we get to speak into that for you guys too. Yeah. So that's good. Let's talk about siblings. Okay. Siblings and fighting. Certainly in our home of 6 people total, you and your 3 siblings never fight.
Oh, that's a lie. We fight all the time, I feel like. Oh my gosh. Especially me and my sister. We're just...
Yeah. There's that element there, isn't it? I like to joke that you guys are like best friends, but then you're also enemies.
Yeah.
Within seconds, I think sometimes, right? Like,
it's crazy. Like, we'll be fighting about a piece of clothing, and the next minute she's like, so you want to go get food? Like, you want to go?
Do you also think that's because you're the only one that can transport her?
Yeah,
probably. Yeah, so she's learned the game of, I'm going to tell you you're pretty so you can go and get me Starbucks.
She would do that.
Yeah, she would. But, okay, so we've talked about, like, sibling and conflict, and it's just inevitable. That's what happens. Like, we love our siblings, but we're also, like, gonna have tension with them. And I know in our house that what tends to happen is whoever is the loudest, the parents then turn towards whoever is proclaimed the perpetrator and tell them to shut down. So how can parents help when your siblings are fighting each other?
I think that parents tend to, like, take sides. I feel like it even happens in our house. Like, sometimes you just take sides, and it's, like you said, like the loudest person or something like that. Like, just listening to what each person has to say, because there's always 2 sides of the story. There always is.
Yep.
So it just helps to listen.
I think that's a really great piece of wisdom too, right? Like, take a moment. I think parents, going back to whoever the loudest, like, we're just thinking, we just want the chaos to stop. We just want everyone to be unified. And so we take the shortest route to shut everything down so there can be peace. But as you're saying, when we do that, we're picking a side and we're not hearing both people's complaints and then actually creating a resolution or a solution to that. So I do think that that's wisdom, and just asking the kids, okay, so what happened? But then there's that whole thing of, but yet, which one do we believe?
Yeah.
Because perspectives are reality, and not everyone's perspective is appropriate. I do think sometimes there's patterns that parents we see in kiddos that we're just like, okay, I'm guessing you probably said something first, which made the other one react a certain way. But in that case, like, how do you suggest that parents listen, I guess, to their kids to hear their stories?
I think just asking questions helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe just separating them and just saying, okay, you tell me your side. Then you wait and go to the other side. Now you tell me your side.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you have both sides of the picture. And actually, I think that could de-escalate the emotion the parent is even experiencing.
Yeah.
Don't you think? It gives us all a moment to maybe calm down a little bit so that we're not reacting out of anger when we deal with the situation, including with the siblings themselves, right? Yeah, that's good. Okay, so one last thing as we conclude this conversation, let's talk a little bit about how can we get parents to get their kids to open up to them. I feel like you and I were pretty close, but I believe that's partially because of your personality. Like you were just more open.
Yeah.
I know that at least one of your siblings is not as open with what they experience. And so I know that we parent different per personality, per kiddo, and I get that. But any suggestions on how parents can help their kids just open up and share what's going on in their life?
I think going back to just listening. Listening helps so much. Like at first, I didn't tell you as much of like things that were going on in my life, but I just started sharing little bits and pieces and you would listen, and it just, I feel like, built trust over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'll just talk for hours about just literally anything.
Yeah. The best is when it's like 10:30 at night and I'm like ready for bed and you're like, Mom, let me tell you everything about my day to day. And I'm like, I love this so much, but yet it's
But I wanna go to
bedtime. Yeah. No, that's great. And so even with like your siblings, for instance, just even listening little bits by little bits, because what I have seen, not only in my own kiddos, but also other kids, is like they want their parents to listen and understand and see them. So they are testing their parents by sharing little bits of piece of information. So I'm going to show you this little bit about what my friend did, and I'm going to see how you respond to that. And if you respond well, then I know that I can trust you to share this little bit more towards you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love how we can just slowly progress to being more vulnerable and open with one another. But parents, we have to listen to this. We have to be an active listener and pay attention, get off our phones, get off our TVs, whatever it is that's distracting us, and see and love our kiddos in that way. So, wow. Well, this was a great conversation, Haley. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was fun. And you, my friends, thank you so much for joining us for this another amazing episode of Embracing Your Season. We have tons of episodes that would be an amazing resource for you. So go ahead and check those out. For those that are listening via podcast platform, we also have a YouTube channel. So you get to see my daughter's beautiful face. I helped make that, friends. That's what I made. I'm so proud of all my hard work. But definitely check us out. Make sure that you share, you like, you add 5 stars, all the things. Let us know how we are doing here at Embracing Your Season. Again, join us next time for another amazing episode. Be blessed and encouraged.